Hello everyone, I hope everybody's well. I'm back with another video, and y'all just won't let this die, will you? Y'all just don't want to let this die. I post pictures of my adorable kitty cat every day, literally every day, and I get hardly no traction. I write a post about Vita Ayala explaining that what she said about the job posting, even if you don't like it, is not illegal. She didn't do anything wrong. Again, not to say that I agree with the language she used, but she didn't do anything wrong. And y'all blow up my comment section. Y'all blow up my comment section. I do hope that if you've commented that you've also watched the video. I made a 25 minute video on this also. And I asked you to watch the video not only for views. It's actually not because of that. I asked you to watch the video so that you have a better understanding of my position, where I'm coming from when I write something like this, right? Now, uh, I will say that although there's been, of course, strong disagreement and I've sort of been at odds with the audience in this particular matter, I will give credit to most people who have been respectful in their discourse and disagreement with me, right? But I'm going to try to explain one more time why, regardless of how you feel about Vita as a creator, as a person, or whether you agree or not with her tweets, that she actually did not engage in anything legally actionable that could get DC or Marvel in trouble. So I hope that, again, if you've read this, that you've also watched the video, because I do explain in the video that I do have a decade's worth of experience with job searches and working with HR. In fact, literally, this week I was looking over um, search documents for various searches that were taking place over the holiday while I was on break. I literally have two searches I have to follow up on, right? Because they're asking for approvals to interview. So I have to review the information provided. And yes, that does include demographic data, right? Knowing how many people applied and what demographics they fall into. Whether you like it or not, this is a very real thing that all businesses, whether it be a college like where I work, or whether it be Disney, Marvel, right? Marvel Entertainment, have to do, have to consider. Like it or lump it. That's the reality. You can disagree with it all you like. You can disagree with it on moral grounds or philosophical grounds. That's fine. But all businesses reach out to certain demographics, right? But here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Let's look at this one here from Kessening, right? Now I wouldn't usually single people out, but I think there's an interesting thing here. It says here, Vita Ayala, and right, and it's at me, right? So Vita Ayala may not have the power to hire people, but who's to say she has no influence in who's being hired? You. First of all, please don't come at me aggressively. I'm not coming at you aggressively. I'm not coming at this situation or anyone involved aggressively. Right? Again, you don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with what Vita said. I don't agree with what Vita said. I said in the video that I did that if I was putting out a tweet like that, I wouldn't have used that language. I wouldn't have specified race. I would have kept it very generalized. So please, don't get mad at me because I'm taking a position that is opposite of what you think or what you want to believe about a process that I literally do every day and have done every day for 10 years. But you do bring up a good point about who's to say she has no influence, right? What I think you are trying to get at is a conflict of interest, right? And believe it or not, conflict of interest is something that, at least in the job search processes I have been a part of and I've given instruction for, written instruction for, helped create a e-charge process for, does address that. And what I can tell you is that at least where I work. Now, this is not to say that where I work and how Disney does things is a perfect one-to-one comparison, but I do believe that it does give me a certain knowledge of the process, right? Or at least sort of in certain general elements of it. A conflict of interest, at least in my experience, happens when someone who is on a search committee, right? A search committee is a committee of people, it can be between, usually in my experience, 3 and 7 people, who are brought together, usually from different offices or different levels of employment, depending on the position, right? To evaluate the applications, right? To see who's qualified, or rather, who's met the minimum qualifications, who hasn't met the minimum qualifications, and of those who met the minimum qualifications on the job description, who they believe is uh, qualified enough for interviews, and then of course possibly being hired, right? Now, the instruction that I have given, that we have given in my experience, is that if you are on the search committee, again, if you are part of the committee that evaluates resumes, right, and you see an application for a person you know, right, and you have a connection to them, right, or a certain bias toward them, positive or negative, you have to inform us. You would have to tell me, right? Now, there's sort of two levels to this, right? For example, and this is real, and this is true. If my brother, if I was on a search committee, and my brother applied for a position, right, and I'm on the search committee, I see his resume, I would have to tell the head of the search committee, right, and the head of the office, right, the head of HR and compliance and all that, hey, I have to recuse myself. I have to recuse myself from this process because a member of my family has applied. Because nobody would assume that I could be fair and unbiased and objective if my own brother applied for a job, right? I believe I could, but nobody else would believe I could, right? And this applies to things like family, your husband, your wife, your ex, right? Anything like that. Anybody who has a personal relationship with you, you would have to tell the chair of the search committee, right? You'd have to tell HR, you have to tell the HR rep, and you have to tell my office. My office is compliance. And if you don't tell us, we will find out. Because I have caught people not telling. And I have told them, like, look, you can't keep this from us, right? Because, at least in my experience, we look over who's applying. And if we see certain things, like, say, similar last name, right, we will inquire, hey, are these two people related? And if they are, and I have seen instances where they are, I will tell my supervisor. And that person gets removed. They get recused from the search committee. And they can no longer serve on that search committee, right? The second part is if you have worked with somebody, right? A former or current coworker, for example. You will be asked if you believe you could be unbiased in this situation, right? For example, if my best friend applied for a job where I work and I'm on the search committee, right? I still have to notify them that, hey, I know this person, we're very good friends, we have a work history together, right? And then, right, the question becomes, does the chair, does the compliance person, does HR believe you when you say you could be unbiased, right? In my experience, more often than not, you will be asked to come off the uh, search committee. At least when it comes to that person. For example, you wouldn't be allowed to be part of the evaluation of that person's resume or that person's say if they got to interviews, you wouldn't be allowed to sit in on the interview, right? So I think what you're talking about is conflict of interest. There are ways to try to mitigate that, and I'm pretty sure that Disney Marvel HR is aware of that. But again, Vita's not part of the search committee, so it doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter. She's not even an actual employee of Marvel, not in the standard, salaried employee sense, right? She's on contract with them. She's at least to my knowledge. If someone knows different, let me know. But she's an independent freelance contractor. That's how she can work at Marvel and DC and Image and all these other places at effectively the same time because she works on a contract. But she's not necessarily work for the company. She's not employed with them in the traditional sense, right? So there we go. So there's that, and then it continues because we see people with no power or influence in hiring people manage to somehow have some influence after all. And again, unless you have some sort of knowledge, right? How do you know that Vita has any influence, right? Because you're saying that, well, how can I say she doesn't have influence? Well, I'm gonna throw that question back to you. How do you know she does have influence? Do you know who's on the search committee for this position? Do you know who's part of the hiring team? Do you know who's part of the interview team? Do you have any knowledge of these things that gives you reason to believe that Vita Ayala has some sort of connection or is in someone's ear just because she made 4 tweets you disagree with? If you're going to ask me how I can say she has no influence, then I'm going to ask you how do you know she has any undue influence? Unless you have this insider knowledge of Disney and Marvel's hiring practices, I'm not quite sure how you can how you can claim she has any undue influences or rather influence in this process, right? And then example Netflix and Dave Chappelle and the recent linked memo on hiring practices. Okay, and that's Netflix problem. Last I checked, Dave doesn't work for Netflix. He's not an employee of theirs. Again, it's a contract in two entirely different things. Right now, if there has been a leaked memo on hiring practices at Netflix, right, then Netflix has to address that. Netflix and Marvel Disney, are two different companies. What happens at Netflix does not mean it's happening at Marvel. That's like saying that because Activision Blizzard is getting sued and having issues with uh, how it treats women and whatnot, that Nintendo is having the same problem. Unless you have proof that they are, don't try to compare the two. On top of that, what she tweeted, it doesn't excuse her bigotry. Again, I don't see where she expressed bigotry here. At best, it was preference and favoritism, which, guess what, is not necessarily illegal in her case. She was letting people of a certain demographic know that a job posting was available. That's not bigotry. Favoritism, perhaps, right? And again, I don't agree with the way she tweeted that out. But again, companies advertise toward certain demographics all the right? Which is the crux of the hubbub of her tweet and not her power to hire, right? Which you are trying so hard to change the narrative. I'm not trying to change any narrative. How am I trying to change a narrative? I have been incredibly consistent in my position on this, in my video, in the tweets I've made on Twitter, in the comment in the community tab, in my responses to people in this comment section and in other videos. I'm not trying to change anything. I'm giving my perspective, my understanding of the narrative based on my decade plus, right? It's about a decade, it's around like 10, 11 years of doing this for a living. That you disagree with my take on it is fine. You have every right to disagree with me. But do not accuse me of trying to change a narrative because you do not agree with my position. Those are two entirely different things. Disagree with me, fine. Accuse me of something I have not done, please don't do that. Right? To change the narrative with a false equivalent argument of you liking cats over dogs. No, the point was that I was trying to point out how people are assuming the worst, right? I post pictures of my cat every day. I seldom ever talk about dogs, right? If people treated me the way they are treating Vita in this situation, people would say crazy things like Jean must hate dogs because she never talks about dogs, right? She only talks about cats. She only has a cat. She only puts up cat pictures. She's obviously pro-cat, so she must be anti-dog, right? Fortunately, people don't say that about me. But the thing is that people are effectively making the same argument toward Vita Ayala because they don't like her. You and others are allowing your dislike, your own negative bias. You talk about me changing a narrative. I'm probably one of the few people looking at this from a mostly objective point of view because I am referencing my work experience. I'm not referencing or overly relying on my own negative bias toward Vita. I don't like her. I don't like her work. The woman has me blocked and I never spoke to her. It is not a matter of whether I personally like her. It is a matter of what she is doing or what she was attempting to do wrong. That is the position I am approaching this from. And at least from where I sit, everybody else is up in their feelings, or at least most people are up in their feelings, right? And being outraged and righteous over a process that they either don't understand. Okay? I have experience in this. That's what I'm referencing. That's what forms my narrative that you claim that I'm trying to change. That's what informs my viewpoint. My point in the cats v dogs line was to prove that just because somebody favors something, right, is pro something else does not mean that they are anti the opposite, right? Just because I love cats and am very pro cat does not mean I am anti dog, right? People could assume that, but their assumption is not the truth. That was the point, right? It's not the same what Vita is advocating and dissuading people of certain groups given her activist rhetoric. Again, you and everyone else who has made this argument have yet to actually prove that she was dissuading non-cis dudes from applying. Just because she does not overtly say, hey, cis dudes, you should apply too, does not mean she is dissuading them. If I say, hey, New Yorkers, this Marvel editor position is open, right? And we need Queens, we need Brooklyn, we need the Bronx, we need Staten Island to apply. does not mean I am dissuading Manhattanites from applying. Just because I don't mention Manhattan does not mean that I'm dissuading Manhattanites. Or if I were to say everybody who is not from Manhattan should apply, right? That is not actively dissuading people from Manhattan from applying. Now, is it rude to say it that way? Yes. I don't agree with rudeness. As I've said several times, I don't agree with the way she wrote any of her tweets. And I think she was incredibly unprofessional. But the actual sort of like intent of her tweets, what she was trying to do, is not illegal. It's not. She was pitching the job to a certain demographic. Not illegal. Disney is not going to get in trouble. Marvel is not going to get in trouble. Or at least very unlikely that they're going to get in trouble because of the 4 tweets of someone who doesn't even work for them in any sort of official capacity. Right? Vita is actively dissuading people with her tweets. That is a statement you need to prove. Okay? That's a statement that you believe in, and many others believe in, and you're entitled to your belief. But that's a statement you need to actively prove. There is more proof on my side that she's not dissuading people than there is proof on yours, and those who agree with you, that she is. You liking cats over dogs doesn't make sense and doesn't apply to her defense of this rhetoric. Yes, it does. And I just explained why. Right? And there was another comment, right? I'm not going to scroll to it because I don't want to put the person on blast. The person was very respectful. But there was another comment which sort of brought up a legal issue. And this is something that a lot of people have been mentioning, well, couldn't Vita get Marvel in trouble from a legal perspective? Right? Couldn't this open up any sort of investigation into discrimination at Marvel? In my experience and in my opinion, not really. Not really. And I'll explain why. Right? This is the job posting. It's no longer on the Marvel Disney website. So this is from LinkedIn. Right? Marvel Associate Editor. Marvel Entertainment. I want to focus on this part. Okay? Marvel Entertainment. That's the employer here. Right? Let's look at what the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, says about employers. Right? The EEOC enforces federal laws prohibiting employment discrimination. These laws protect employees and job applicants against employment discrimination when it involves unfair treatment because of race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, gender identity, and sexual orientation, national origin, age, 40 or older, disability, or genetic information. Right? Harassment by managers, co-workers, or others in the workplace. Again, the workplace, which would be Marvel Entertainment. Right? Or co-workers or others in the workplace because of race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, national origin, age, 40 or older, disability, or genetic information. Denial of a reasonable workplace accommodation that the employee needs because of religious beliefs or disability. Retaliation because the employee complained about job discrimination or assisted with a job discrimination investigation or lawsuit. You notice how all that focuses on the employer and the employee, people hired to work at the company. Vita Ayala is not a company. She's not doing the hiring. Right? And it says here about other uh, requirements. The EEOC also collects workforce data from some employers. So even the EEOC will inquire about your workforce data, also known as your demographic data. This is why people like me exist, to collect this data at the place of work, to keep record of it. Right? But let's see here. Then it says prohibited employment policy / practices. Right? And it says here, under the laws enforced by the EEOC, it is illegal to discriminate against someone, applicant or employee, because of that person's race, color, religion, sex, including gender identity, sexual orientation, and pregnancy, national origin, age, 40 or older, disability, or genetic information. It is also illegal to retaliate against a person because he or she complained about discrimination, filed a charge of discrimination, or participated in an employment discrimination investigation or lawsuit. The law prohibits discrimination in every aspect of employment, right? It says the laws enforced by the EEOC prohibit an employer or other covered entity. Employer. From using neutral employment policies and practices that have a disproportionately negative effect on applicants or employees of a particular race, color, religion, sex, including gender identity, sexual orientation, and pregnancy, or national origin, or an individual with a disability or class of individuals with disabilities if the policies or practices at issue are not job related and necessary to the operation of the business. The laws enforced by the EEOC also prohibit an employer from using neutral employment policies and practices that have a disproportionately negative impact on applicants or employees aged 40 or older if the policies or practices at issue are not based on a reasonable factor other than age. Then it goes into job advertisements, which is the part that pretty much everybody's focused on, because what Vita engaged in, functionally speaking, was advertising the position, right? And focusing that advertisement toward, or I'd rather say overtly focusing that advertisement toward a certain demographics of people, right? It says here, job advertisements. It is illegal for an employer, right? Again, an employer. The employer in this case is Marvel Entertainment, to publish a job advertisement that shows a preference for or discourages someone from applying for a job because of his or her race, color, religion, sex, including gender identity, sexual orientation, pregnancy, national origin, age, 40 or older, disability, or genetic information. For example, a help wanted ad that seeks females or recent college graduates may discourage men and people over 40 from applying and may violate the law. Indeed, what this is talking about here is the language of a job description, which in my work is something that I do look over. We do look over the language of a posting before it is posted. Now, I can't say for certain that Marvel Entertainment does the same thing. I don't work there. But I would imagine that it's a standard practice because nobody wants to get in trouble with the EEOC. Right? But let's actually look at the job description, right? Put out by the employer, Marvel, and see if it in any way violates or could be interpreted to violate what the EEOC says here, right? So let's look at that. Right? Marvel Entertainment, they had 51 applicants, right? They're no longer accepting applications. It says, Marvel Entertainment is seeking a pop culture expert to join Marvel Digital Media in the role of an associate editor, responsible for the creation and curation of content on Marvel.com. The associate editor must be an expert in the Marvel universe with deep knowledge of Marvel characters across comic books, video games, and more, in addition to the larger universe of fandom. Responsibilities, right? Edit and publish website content, news articles, character content, media-related content. Work closely with the larger Marvel.com editorial team on long term and short term content planning in the form of editorial calendars and content plans. Participate in the curation of content sections of Marvel.com from a high level, ensuring content meets the company's quality, promotional, and marketing goals. Participate in content brainstorms for developing ideas with editorial, social media, and video game production teams. Schedule and manage freelancer content. Freelancer, right? So this person would technically perhaps be managing Vita through entire workflow of assignments, delivery, and publishing. Facilitate the guidance of content development and editorial direction across editorial team, external resources, and with other departments. Help develop editorial plans and research topics as needed to aid in editorial content from Marvel.com as well as Marvel's digital series. Basic qualifications. Experience writing for an established entertainment outlet, website, or publication. Intimate knowledge of the Marvel brand, its characters, its history in the Marvel Universe across multiple media with extra focus on Marvel comics and video games. Knowledge and expertise in web-based publishing, content management systems, and content creation tools, including Adobe Photoshop. Experience in working with a distributed team in multiple locations, as well as working with remote freelancers. So in other words, remote Vitas. Ability to multitask and work on a number of projects at once. Required education. A degree in communications, marketing, or English is preferred, right? So that's a preference. That's not a requirement. They should have specified that. They should have, at least in my experience, they should have specified which degree is required and which one is preferred. This is the only line where I'm like, okay, you guys probably should have fixed this a little bit, right? And then it shows that's a full-time job, associate, marketing, public relations, writing, editing, right? But nothing in this job description about gender or age or anything close to it. So the job description, which is posted by the employer, right, is not in any way in violation of the EEOC. Now it says recruitment. It is also illegal, right? It is also illegal for an employer to recruit new employees in a way that discriminates against them because of their race, color, religion, sex, including gender identity, sexual orientation and pregnancy, national origin, age, 40 or older, disability, or genetic information. For example, an employee's reliance on word of mouth recruitment by its mostly Hispanic workforce may violate the law if the result is that almost all new hires are Hispanic. Now, I know what people are going to say. This is it, right? This is where Vita gets people in trouble, right? Except for one thing, or a few things. Vita is a freelancer. Unless somebody has information that is different to my knowledge, Vita Ayala is a freelancer. She is not an official company employee, right? For example, let me scroll down here, right? This is from her Twitter. It says, work at Black Mass, DC, Dynamite, IDW, Image, Macmillan, Marvel, Realm, Valiant, Vault. She probably wouldn't say, or they probably wouldn't say work at all these different places if she was employed at one. So again, we're talking about a freelancer who works on contract, not a official formal employee of Marvel, right? Now, some may say, well, what about the reliance on word of mouth? Doesn't this get them in trouble? Well, how do you know that Marvel's workforce is majority black, female, brown, trans, non-binary, or whomever else she reached out to? She is exactly one person who is not employed uh, uh, in a legal sense as an employee at the company, right? Again, she's a freelance contractor. It's not the same as being a salaried employee, like whomever is hired for this position is, right? This is the closest thing people could possibly get her on. But again, unless you can answer these questions of their current workforce demographic, right? And even here it says if the result is that almost all new hires are Hispanic, right? New hires would be multiple people, right? This is a position for one person, one. Even if that person ended up being a black non non-binary trans woman, right? You would need a lot to prove that Vita's tweet in any way had, or tweets I should say, had any undue um, uh, influence on the hiring practices of a company that she is not a part of in any official capacity. You would have to conduct an investigation just to prove that argument before you could go on to make a complaint at the EEOC or start a lawsuit or anything else. This is the closest thing, right? Because it could be argued that with the post, it was by word of mouth. But even that, in this case, doesn't quite apply here. Right now, it would be different. It would be different if Vita, say, um, was doing this under the official Marvel account, right? Like, for example, the Marvel, right? The official Marvel Twitter, right? If she wrote that under the official Marvel Twitter, which would then be under the Marvel brand, right? Saying brown and black people apply, then you would have a problem, right? Then you could claim that the recruitment, right, is sketchy. But again, unless somebody has proof that I don't, there's nothing legally actionable here from what I can see. But I will leave links, and if you guys want to continue this debate, so long as we're all respectful, that's fine toward me. But I've seen this argument of, Vita can get them in legal trouble, or and similar arguments, and guess what? Unless you guys can prove that she's in the ear of a person that is, again, on the search committee or the interview team, or is a high-powered executive, or is a hiring manager. Someone mentioned, oh, but what if Vita was the hiring manager? If Vita was a hiring manager, she wouldn't have even been tweeting about the job. Hiring managers, at least in my experience, are not allowed to make tweets like that or even speak about the position publicly, because they're the hiring manager. They're the one deciding whether or not the person gets the job, right? But if y'all want to keep debating this and disagreeing with me out of nothing but anger, because from my perspective, that's what it is. Y'all are angry about what Vita said, and because it comes across as me defending Vita, which I'm not really trying to do. It's not about defending her. It's about defending what she did or what she was attempting to do, right? From where I sit, a person who is contracted to Marvel, who is not a formal, official, regular, salaried employee, marketed exactly one job to a particular group of people and said, hey, apply if you want to, if you're interested. Do I think it was the best way to market the job? No. I wish she had kept her tweet to herself. But if the question is, can Marvel get in trouble for what Vita did? Or could this invite some sort of unwanted legal attention, right, to Marvel because of what she tweeted? From best I can tell, no. I don't see where Marvel could possibly get in trouble for this. Now, maybe someone in Marvel still will have a conversation with her and be like, "Can you please stop talking about our job openings?" That could happen. But if we're talking about from a legal perspective, there's nothing here. At least from what I can see, there is nothing here. Okay, you want there to be something here. I understand that. I don't like Vita either. But there's nothing here. I hate to break it to you, but she's not going to get in trouble for this, most likely. Marvel's not going to get in trouble for this, almost certainly. Okay? And you're mad at me, right? Because you don't like her. I beg of you, try to look at this from an objective point of view if you can. She didn't do anything wrong here. Was she unprofessional? Yes. But that doesn't mean that she broke any laws, legally speaking. This is the reality of job searches and advertising. I'm sorry if you don't like this reality. It's not exactly the most fun reality I've been part of. But this is what happens. This is what it is. And as I said here, you are attributing way too much credit to someone who's just a writer, who is literally advertising for the job for the person who would oversee her. So again, unless you've got insider knowledge and you can prove definitively that she has undue influence, right? Or that she knows someone, right, who's part of the process, unless you've got proof to your claims, please stop barking up my tree. Anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think. I know it's a super long one, but I wanted to cover a lot of points. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day or night wherever you are. Bye.